Welcome to the Company of Dads podcast. I'm your host, Paul Sullivan, and today my guest is me. I'm going to talk about what the past year has been like starting the Company of Dads, going from a career that I loved and enjoyed as a journalist for 25 years into founding a media company, community platform to serve lead dads, those go-to parents who are men, whether they work full-time, part-time, or devote all their time to their children, and in many cases also support their spouses in what they are doing. And talking about myself is not something that I've often done. As a journalist for 25 years, your whole goal is to talk about others, but I've been able to assemble a great team of 4 people, and at our weekly call, they encouraged me to do this as a way to sort of wrap up the year. As one of them said, you've told all of us a million times how you came to start the Company of Dads, blah, 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 blah. But, what has this year been like? And, what are your goals going forward? What is this thing going to become? So that's what I'm going to attempt to do today. So don't worry, it won't be so contrived that I'm going to actually ask myself questions, but I'll start off with, I guess quickly, that background story. Essentially, for 12 years, 13 years, I was a lead dad incognito. Got the idea for the Company of Dads during the pandemic when I realized there was no other community out there for this type of parent. Every other type of parent has a community. You're a stay-at-home mom, tons of community. If you're a go-to-work dad, you go off to work every day, or used to at least, but you have your colleagues, you have the people you have grab lunch with, a drink, travel, you've got your community. Working moms, every school district in America reaches out to working moms, every company in America, even some of the really bad ones have programs for working moms. But if you're the lead dad, there isn't anything. At best, you're the butt of jokes. You're Mr. Mom, you're a house husband, you're retired, which is one of my favorite ones, because unless you work for a hedge fund, how many people really retire when they have kids? But that was the genesis. I talked to my editor at the Times in August of 2021. I wrote my last Wealth Matters column in October of 2021, and was fortunate then to write a final column called The Times Insider that talked about what it had been like to write 608 columns for the New York Times, more than 1 million words in 13 years there, and what I was going to do next. And that was really where this story is going to pick up, because that's when things got exciting for me, at least. They got stressful, very stressful. They got exciting all over again. I'd say, it's been 85% exciting, 15% stressful, which I count myself lucky. So what happened? What happened when that last column ran? Well, I went out and said, look, I'm leaving. I'm starting a community for lead dads. And in my mind, it was always going to be 3 things. It was going to be a media company, which would have podcasts, newsletters, features. It was going to be a community. So we would have a private community group. We would have various events, knowing they'd probably be online at first and in person later on. And the biggest possible vision, have national events, have sort of Company of Dads chapters around the country, have one big national event each year, maybe 2. That'd be a lot of fun. And the third part would be talking to companies about what they're doing with their the way their employees work now in 2022, in what we're calling the next normal. But essentially, that admission that nobody is going back to 2019. Those of us who were able to, had white collar jobs, who were knowledge workers, we had this moment where we were at home and we were working, and moms and dads saw roles differently, and they saw that they could share more, they should share more, that people could step up, that people's careers became more fluid perhaps, and that, but we as humans may understand that, but I don't think a lot of companies have caught on yet. And obviously, there are a couple examples of ones that are doing horrible things. Which I don't need to mention, but the majority are trying to do the right thing, and they're just not quite sure what the right thing are. So those are the three, tenets of it. And that final column in October, as you might imagine, was super helpful, and all kinds of people reached out to me, and that was exciting and positive. And I guess that's, as I look back, that's probably the sort of first mistake I made because of that great enthusiasm. I'd had a plan to sort of launch things gradually at the beginning of 2022 and ramp up. But there was so much excitement and so much inbound interest from the three groups that I hope would be interested. Men who were lead dads, working moms, and HR executives who thought, how can the company of dads work with me? And so I had hired somebody to build out just the initial website. And then that person, sort of created this whole team to sort of put everything together. And I didn't do my due diligence. I didn't really, delve deeply enough into what that person was promising me. And that was a mistake. I was lucky that, sort of force of personality as I was sort of push through, but a lot of things I should have had early on, like a social media person, like somebody to sort of, advise on how we're going to organize, content, stuff I'd had at the New York Times for a long time. And obviously took for granted. I didn't have, and this person promised those things and it didn't happen. And, when I tell the story to other founders, and I still struggle to call myself an entrepreneur, I call myself a founder, and running a media company. When I talk to other founders and tell them the story, they kind of roll their eyes and they're like, well, of course you made a mistake in the beginning. And they're right. A lot of people make mistakes, and I was very fortunate to have the support, the backing, both the emotional backing and the financial backing of my wife and my family, because it was a costly mistake. It cost a lot of wasted money, a lot of wasted time. Almost everything that group did, we've redone or undone since then. And I know I'm supposed to take that as a valuable lesson. I'm supposed to wear that as a badge of pride. But I don't, because it was a bad mistake. And my wife always tells me it was a learning, opportunity. You got a lot of stuff out of it. But, there are moments where I was like, boy, I wish I had some of that cash back. But, I can't get it back. So I moved forward. And in building, early on, I said, okay, who else can help me? Because I never wanted the company of dads to be just about Paul Sullivan. I wanted the company of dads to be about, all lead dads at first, and then eventually about, dads in general, dads in America, dads in North America, dads, globally, who could get together and hopefully change this dynamic around, what role a father should play, what role a mother should play, and just bring some sort of, rational choice to the discussion as to, who should be the lead parent, who should be the lead careerist, as it were. And so I was able to bring on another group who were lovely, absolutely lovely, everything about them. But, this is my second mistake, not on the same level, but they're all people who came from big media companies as I had. And we were simpatico. We got along really well. They worked really hard. We worked hard together. Everything was sort of right-sized around, expectations and costs. But, I realized that, big media, I didn't need to make things, 5% better. I needed to make things 500% better, 5,000% better. That's how I wanted to grow the company of dads, because of the passion that I have. I want to reach as many people as I can, as quickly as possible. And, do I want to inform and entertain people with our podcast and our newsletter and our videos? Sure, 100%. But I also want to be, part of the conversation that hopefully changes this work-life dynamic. I've been the lead dad to my wife, but I have 3 daughters, and I want them to be able to make, choices. And, everything was going along great with that second group. And then I happened to have this serendipitous meeting in the spring that really changed things for the second half of the year. That serendipitous meeting, for those who know me, who've read a lot of my content, was about, all around golf. I'm a degenerate golfer. I love golf. It's my only hobby, and I'm passionate about it. 2 of my 3 daughters play it with me. I just have a lot of great memories around golf. And I've still continued to write some golf pieces for the New York Times. And I was up in Boston, where the U.S. Open was played in June for the media day. And I ran into this guy who was an inspiration, who is an inspiration for the company of dads. And his name is Eric Anders Lang. And he started something called the Random Golf Club. And on the face of it, they have nothing to do with the company of dads, but the Random Golf Club essentially identified the 80 to 85% of people who love the game of golf but will never play golf at a private country club like Brookline, where the U.S. Open took place. So they'll play it in different ways. And has been wonderful at creating the sense of community for that group. And we've done our research at the company of dads. We know there are about 25 million men in America out of 75 million fathers and 125 million men overall who qualify as lead dads. A group of them are divorced, widowed, separated. Another group tell the U.S. Census that they are at-home dads, and a third group, are in relationships where their spouse earns the same or more than them, and they're ripe to sort of step up and be lead dads. And so I ran into Eric there, and I started talking to him. And Eric had been super generous when everything was starting in December of 2021. Had invited me down to Austin, where the Random Golf Club is based, and he introduced me to a whole bunch of people that worked with him. And it was like a master class in how to start a media company and community platform. And I'm incredibly grateful to Eric. Saved me a lot of time, taught me a lot of things. And when we were there at Brookline, I started asking him how certain people were doing, and asked him how his partner was doing. And he said, they decided to go their separate ways. And at first I was sad to hear this, and then I thought, boy, his business partner is an amazing guy, and his business partner is named Evan Roosevelt. And so I reached out to Evan, and we started talking. We had hit it off in Austin, whatever that was, 6 months earlier. And he kind of came on over the summer to sort of be a consultant, and he come on more formally in September. And he's really been sort of a right-hand man. He's been able to handle all the business stuff, the whole business side of the company of dads, which I'm not well versed in. I'm a storyteller. I'm a journalist. I'm, an idea guy. And I'm not a business guy. I've never pretended to be a business guy. So it's been wonderful to have him. And, with the two of us, we have this really excellent team. And I want to give them a shout out now. I have Helder, who's been helping me since almost the very beginning, or at least the beginning of when we started having podcasts. And he's produced every single podcast, and he's amazing, and he's a friend, and he's even taught me about bourbon, which I'm not sure if that's good or bad, but I love bourbon even more now because of Helder, so I'm grateful to him. We have Emily. Emily does all of our web development, and I found her in the most classic way for a lead dad, which was by hijacking my wife's iPhone. I hijacked it because my wife has access to something in our town that is really the sort of repository of all information, and that is the Facebook groups for our town. There's a Facebook moms group, and then there's a Facebook working moms group. So impersonating my wife, with her knowledge, but impersonating my wife, I had sought people to help with the development, and we found Emily, and she's been absolutely first rate. Absolutely just a real a pro's pro, happily doing the tedious stuff that has to be done week by week, and also reimagining a lot of the structure of the site and making it so much better, like thousands percentage points better than it was in February when it launched. And then we have Kelly. Kelly is our social media person, who's awesome and direct. And I love that she is so direct. And I met Kelly through my college roommate's youngest brother, who runs a great coffee company called Rise Brewing. And she had done social media for them, and he recommended her highly, and he was right. And she sort of taught me to be much, much better at social media. And so we're sitting here now at the end of the year, and I'm feeling sort of team-wise, structure-wise, awesome. So that's the first part of this. That's the sort of, journey. And, the second part, I'm going to talk about some of, the content that we did this year and, what that meant to me and hopefully to the community. I mean, one of the things that I loved doing as a journalist was talking to people. You don't, really get into being a journalist if you're not interested in people's stories. And one of the first regular pieces we created was a podcast, was a Company of Dads podcast. Now, they're a little long in the beginning until we realized that people stopped listening at about 25 minutes. So then we made them about 25 minutes. But they've been, we've done 46 original ones this year, 2 more compilations that are running over the holidays, and then this will be the 49th one of the year. And we've had some, great people. I mean, I did a podcast with Najee Good, who's become a friend, but Najee won a Super Bowl playing for the Philadelphia Eagles. He did the podcast with me in his car outside of the ballet studio where he was waiting to pick up his 2 daughters, and such a generous, thoughtful, insightful guy. Had obviously a hilarious one with J.R. Havlin, who won 8 Emmy Awards, writing for The Daily Show, whose delivery is amazing and had me laughing throughout, but also was incredibly insightful. One that I really connected with was with Mike McGee. And it may be the first time where I've interviewed both a husband and a wife in 2 different roles. His wife is Annika Sorenstam, the greatest female golfer of all time. And I had interviewed her years ago for the New York Times, right before she won the senior U.S. Women's Open. And I knew that Mike was the ultimate lead dad, like super, super supportive. They've got 2 kids and he's there. And I had just such a wonderful, warm conversation with Mike. Bruce Feiler is somebody that I'd idolized and followed for years. He's a wonderful writer who's had a varied career, but he wrote a book called The Council of Dads, not the Company of Dads, The Council of Dads. And it's when he thought he was going to die. He had cancer, he thought he was going to die, and he assembled this council. And coincidentally, I'm on a council of dads for a friend's daughters, whose dad, who was a wonderful man, passed away. And talking to Bruce and how he thinks about fatherhood, but also how he thinks about our new way of work. He was a sort of deep thinker and very generous with his time. David Newsom was a brother from another mother. He lives in Portland. He's a chief marketing officer for a financial services firm. But the 2 of us feel so similar about the power of our calendars and the power of calendars to sort of bring about equity and change. And as a partner in his firm, he puts a block every day of 2 hours to be with his son and get his son ready for school, which is a big deal because he's on the West Coast and his firm is based on the East Coast. And he's leading by example. Eric Arthrell, longtime Deloitte consultant, done all kinds of research on the changing nature of work. He shared some of those findings with me. We had some international lead dads. Mark Tamhana in Australia, father of 6, completely embraced being a lead dad, and his kids are sort of in 2 tranches, 3 and 3, and his insights from what he learned from the first and how he applies it to the second set, incredible. Ian Dinwiddie, funny guy, friends with all the members of Coldplay, which is a complete non sequitur, but I thought it was pretty cool. And he's really working, as I am, with businesses to help them change the way they interact with working parents. But I've also been lucky that I've met some remarkable men who reached out to me, from some of the earliest ones. Dave Andrews, former Royal Canadian Air Force pilot, Alex McKenzie, also known as the Emperor of Ice Cream, Fernando Finstad and Nick Brophy, 2 lead dads who met through their spouses, who work on Wall Street, and both were just really honest with what it's like to be that go-to parent, particularly in a world where their wives work in hyper-masculine worlds. And they were, super thoughtful. We had some great experts talk about the research behind the changing roles of parents, what the pandemic had done to parenting, what companies can do better. We opened up a conversation. We helped tell some great stories, and probably one of the most compelling stories was around Marvin Aviles, a lead dad who I met 15 years ago playing poker in New York City, and then kind of came back to his story on Facebook and was sort of baffled. It was literally like I'd, flipped 150 pages ahead in the book. And Marvin had been on an odyssey, a 6-7 year odyssey, to get parental rights to be part of his daughter's life. And it took him from New York to London during the pandemic. It cost him a small fortune in legal bills, caused him to change his career. But ultimately he was victorious. And this, end of 2022 is going to be the first holiday season where he's not fighting to see his daughter, where he's just with her. But as I look at the year on the whole, what I've benefited most from is people who are willing to support me. Eve Rodsky, author of Fair Play, was really early in reaching out to me and gave me a lot of confidence to sort of keep chugging along in my lane and to make the Company of Dads hopefully a meaningful partner to what so many working moms are doing to bring about equity in the home and equity at work. Two other groups that really stand out for me are Equimundo and Mother Honestly. Both invited me to their conferences this year and allowed me to participate and share the story and whatever insight the Company of Dads has. I also want to thank the board, the advisory board that I've put together. They're deeply knowledgeable people, care about the Company of Dads. They're giving of their time, and it means a lot because they're busy people who have gotten behind me. Now, as for the future of the Company of Dads, I've never been one to tell people what I'm going to do. I've always preferred to sort of put my head down and let my work show what I've done, what I've accomplished. I mean, that's an essential tenet of being a journalist, show, don't tell. And it worked well in my previous life. But now I know people want to know where things are going. And so I'm going to do my best here. As I said, I'm used to being on the other side of the microphone, not interviewing other people, not interviewing myself. So next year, first and foremost, is about continued growth. We're adding a second podcast in January. We've already recorded 10, 11 episodes, so we're going to let that fly, see how it goes. We're looking to bring on more contributors. We've benefited from probably about 10, half dozen people this year who've come on board and shared their stories, and they've been crucial. And it's more crucial to have even more of them because the Company of Dads is never about Paul Sullivan. It's about lead dads, and it's about working moms, and it's about families. And to tell those stories, we need as many different types of lead dads from as many different perspectives and backgrounds as we can to tell the complete story. And on the financial side, the big news is early next year, we're going to open a seed round to raise capital to grow the Company of Dads, to hire more staff, to bring on more contributors, to be able to do some longer pieces, to be able to record a bunch of the corporate work that we're doing, to be able to make it more accessible to a wider group of people, almost sort of like a subscription model to sort of learn from. But what doesn't change in 2023 is our first principles. We want to bring all lead dads together. There are 25 million of us out there. I talked about the three different groups we fall in, but we're a big group of people, and we can be a positive group of people that can help lead to change at home, change in the workplace, change in schools. How many dads volunteer in schools? It's wonderful. It's joyful. I've been able to do it a lot, and it's some of the best time that I get to spend in my day when those days come up. Second, we want to continue to partner with working moms to figure out what companies can do to adapt to the next normal. Third, we want to continue to help families fulfill their full potential. I mean, that's our goal. This is lead dads are part of a unit, and we want that unit to function at the highest level. But our ultimate guiding principle for 2023, 24, 25, and beyond is we want to become the go-to resource for everything to do with fathers, fatherhood, family, support, working moms, kids who are loved and cared for. We want to be the place that you go when you have those questions. We want our community of lead dads to grow and thrive, but we also want that community to inspire other fathers to do more, and to be a bridge to working moms and to corporate HR departments, so they see the company of dads as a go-to place for doing what they need to do in their lives and at work. And, as we've said, early days, we're all in this together. This is not something that we're doing, in a silo. We are all in this together, and we know that together we can make things better. So thank you for 2022. Thank you for tuning in 2023, and I look forward to just so much more, and to being part of the conversation, and to hopefully bringing about some positive change at home and at work. And I'm just very grateful.